everyone. As many of you probably know, Mercury is retrograde at the moment and the cycle is coming to a close in the days to come. I decided that it would be a great idea to do a presentation on Mercury retrograde. I do use that term very lightly, but it's just that a few people, both in my local area and on YouTube, were discussing Mercury retrograde. And I found it interesting that there were so many different philosophies about this astrological phenomena. Some people are for, some against, some think it's superstition, some are confused, some think it's bad. Therefore, I thought this is a great time to just have a chat about it. But of course, there's a certain irony here. If Mercury rules communication, travel, movement, it's not the best time to make a presentation, is it, on anything, let alone Mercury retrograde. Considering Mercury rules these things, it affects anything to do with travel, and that can be vibration, in other words, the spoken word, the internet, computers, mobile phones are affected. Your transportation is affected, whether it's your car or getting the public transport. It affects us in all different ways. It affects us mentally because Mercury rules the mind and the spoken word and contracts. So it's a really good time to have your wits about you. That is Mercury, the wit, that's Gemini. And the thing is, it's quite a powerful Mercury retrograde this time because Mercury is in its own sign, the sign of Virgo. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo is very much a detail sign, but also rules the nervous system. So sometimes Mercury retrograde can just affect you in that way, where you might feel a bit scattered, indecisive, or your nervous system is sort of hyped up, if you like. And, you know, you can sort of, it could disrupt your digestive system, or you just feel very kind of restless, butterflies in the belly, that kind of thing. And so I decided to shine a light on the mysterious or confusing Mercury retrograde. Well, the further I got into it, I just went down the rabbit hole and things just became more disruptive and jagged and disjointed as time went on, which is exactly what Mercury retrograde can do. What I decided to do was just, this is my 4th video. And I had so many technical problems and interruptions. Honestly, this is all completely authentic. And I couldn't resist editing the other videos and just giving you a taste of what can happen during Mercury retrograde. I must admit, I'm one of those people that isn't generally affected by Mercury retro, not in a bad or complex way, but this one was a shocker. Technical issues all over. My electricity went out, my internet went down, separate days. I actually dropped my laptop this morning. Thank God it was on carpet. I'm not that sort of person. I don't drop things. I don't lose things. I'm not clumsy. Yet the past 3 weeks, let me tell you. So in the name of sharing and hilarity, mix-ups, in the name of astrology and honoring that amazing tool, and in the name of laughing at myself, I'm going to piece together the highlights of the videos that I made for you in goodwill with an open heart that turned out so completely disjointed. I hope that gives you an understanding of what Mercury retrograde is about. It's saying these things can happen, and this particular time they actually did happen to me. That's why you'll find astrologers just advising people, don't launch anything important. Try to delay signing contracts at this time. If you are traveling, double check with your agent that everything is locked in. Don't be surprised if your flight is delayed or even cancelled. Check your baggage. You might go one way, the bags will go another. I speak about that in the coming video. All sorts of mix-up and mishaps. But most importantly, I find Mercury retrograde can lead to misunderstanding, missing information, like emails can go astray, the letter doesn't arrive on time, etc. But also just your dialogue can be misinterpreted. So we must be very, very careful when we present anything or discuss anything during Mercury retrograde, because it may not be received the way that you intended it. And that is why I'm doing this little video intro, which is before my intro, which is before the video, which is before the first video. I'm not joking. But I can't resist, because to me, this is the epitome. If I tried to make a documentary on Mercury retrograde, I wouldn't be able to get evidence that's any more on point by example than what you're about to see. So please forgive me for a messy presentation, but at the same time, I hope you understand why I'm sharing this messy presentation. Having said all that, there is some information for you with regards to Mercury retrograde that you can take away with you for the months and years to come, because, you know, again, it's 3 times a year for 3 weeks at a time. And one way or the other, we often find, even if you are not affected by it, your colleague may be affected by it. And, you know, sometimes that can send people into disarray and, you know, at times a bit moody, or it's very, very difficult to work with them because of what they're going through with Mercury retrograde. So it's not superstition, it's the real deal. Thank you so very much for watching, and well, let's proceed on with the next video. I'm doing a vid on Mercury retrograde. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, it is a season that happens 3 times, or should I say it's a cycle that happens 3 times a year, when planet Mercury appears to turn backwards on its axis. All planets do experience a little retrograde cycle throughout the year. In fact, what have we got? We've got Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus are also traveling backwards, or so it appears, at this very time. But Mercury gets all the attention, really, probably because he is more of a personal planet, he's closer to the sun, and it happens 3 times a year. I say in my next video, I actually decided to do this because I found it very interesting that Mercury retrograde came up a number of times in conversations very, very lately. So over the last few weeks, it's really been the topic of conversation, which doesn't always happen. And I'm wondering whether it has something to do with the fact that this is a kind of amped up Mercury retrograde cycle, because Mercury is currently in Virgo. Now, most people know that Mercury rules Gemini, but it also rules Virgo. So it's in its own sign. When you've got Mercury in its own sign, it's amped up. But not only that, Neptune is retrograde. So if you think of the astrology wheel, the 6th house is ruled by Mercury and Virgo, and opposite, the 12th house is ruled by Pisces and Neptune. So Mercury is retrograde here, and Neptune is retrograde there, opposite. And Neptune, this is actually like my 6th video, right? Neptune rules dreams. So in a nutshell, this is a great time to document your dreams. Tell yourself, I will remember my dreams. Write them down. Writing, Mercury. Dissolving boundaries and art and artistry and all that magical stuff is Neptune. So both of them are backwards. So it's like research time. And that's why there's often delays if transport and movement is Mercury and all of a sudden the energy is going backwards. What the astrological gods are saying is, wait, hang on a sec. This is giving you a little window of opportunity to slow down and just review the situation. Go within, see how you're traveling at the moment. Traveling, ha ha ha. Now, before I end this video, it's supposed to be quick and I'm already at 6 minutes. I just wanted to share with you with my personal world what has gone on over the last week. So Mercury is retro for around 3 weeks, but just last week alone, my electricity went the whole area. So I rang my provider and they were in a major panic. They did not know why, but a whole area went down. I went to go out. Isn't it funny how you just don't think? I went to go out. My garage door isn't going to go up, is it? Hello, electronic. And then what happened? I've been so lucky with my car, but I know a few people who have had car issues, which is pretty self-explanatory. But for me, the Messenger app on my mobile phone, gone. I didn't uninstall it, but it did. What else? My internet went down. Not just one of those little quick fix things that you can do at home, go onto your control panel, reconnect to your router, etc. No, it was my provider. Again, they had a major meltdown. Not only that, I rang and I rang and rang and rang and rang, could not get through. So the phone line melted down because it was just so overloaded with people trying to call. They didn't ever call me back. But lucky for me, my internet did resume itself, so I guess they didn't worry about it. But that was out for some hours, so I can't imagine how stressful that would have been for the staff, because you know what it's like. Everyone's up in arms. Computer, internet, I need it now. And yeah, it's very, very tricky. So that happened, and you'll see in the next video, I talk about the fact that I was intelligent enough not to actually commence a WordPress site for myself. During Mercury retrograde, it is not the time to launch, it is the time to wait and review and just check your notes. Oh no, I decided to download WordPress. Problems. I'm still in no man's land. On top of that, so WordPress wouldn't download, and then I had to get to my what do you call it? This is all Mercury, like seriously, anything to do with the brain and communication. My domain name provider. And I had to have my domain name pointed to WordPress. So I went through that process with them, wouldn't work. Went through that process with them again, wouldn't work. Turns out that it was their mistake. I, of course, thought it was my mistake because I'm a novice with regards to WordPress. And so I spent a day trying to sort that out. Complete waste. Then, would you believe, my host, to keep my website on air, they made a mistake. And I thought it was me again. Seriously, spent another day. I'm honestly, that must have been 2 days just on that one there, because I rang back and they're saying, no, this is the right way. Well, it turns out they made a mistake. So it's all Mercury retrograde. And I had to laugh at myself. What else could I do? Because it's really bad timing to commence something. You know, don't launch your novel during Mercury retrograde. That's why I've uploaded the whole thing. Now, during that time, I had a few interruptions, and a really lovely lady that I purchased a couple of decks from, she arrived to drop them off. So I had to do a bit of a pause and go off. And one thing that did happen was one of the decks came with no book. And I didn't know that. She didn't tell me. And I think it was quite innocent because it was very cheap. But I think innocently she didn't think to tell me, and innocently I didn't think to ask. I thought, well, there's going to be a little white book at least. So it's that kind of stuff where information can go, meow. That's Mercury retrograde. I hope I'm not forgetting to tell you anything. Is to share things that may be a little bit, I don't know, off the main track. Off the main, what's the term? Off the main, off the beaten track. Oh, have a cup of tea. I better end this now. So, video coming. So Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. To add to that, we just had the beautiful full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces. So the full moon lunar eclipse is powerful, but the fact that it's in Pisces, which is opposite Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, yes, this is the world of astrology, welcome. Yes, that's why I feel like the ripple effect is deeper and wider than perhaps, you know, a quieter season of Mercury retrograde. But we don't want to go too complicated and complex in this vid, so I just wanted to put it to you this way. I found it interesting how not only on YouTube did I come across a few discussions about Mercury retrograde, but also in my personal life. And believe me, over the years, I've had many discussions about all sorts of astrological phenomenon with people. And some people agree, some people don't. Some people who are very close to me do not believe in the world of astrology. And to quote Rick Levine, when people don't believe in astrology, I think he came up with the most concise, succinct response. And that is, I do not believe in the astrology that you do not believe in. So that would be my response. But that doesn't mean I'm suggesting that I am right and you are wrong. But I would say this much. I think it will enhance your life if you do open yourself to astrology. Because astrology is here to assist you to understand the energies that surround you. And if they surround you, they are within you. That's the way I look at it. Being a macrocosm, microcosm person. And people don't seem to have any problem with believing that the moon does affect us. You know, the moon affects the tides. We are watery by nature. Therefore, our emotions may be heightened during a full moon. You know, the term lunatic comes out of this philosophy. And, you know, what I propose to people normally is, if you believe the moon affects you, why would you not take on board that Mercury does, as an example? But I can only say that I've been following and studying astrology since I was a teen. What happens when a planet goes retrograde? So yes, it isn't just Mercury. Mercury tends to get a lot of attention, perhaps because it comes in short spurts 3 times a year for 3 weeks at a time. The outer planets, because they're further from the sun, they turn retrograde for months at a time, but we'll save that for another day. So basically speaking, does Mercury, the planet, actually turn backwards? Well, of course it doesn't. But if you can imagine, we've got the sun, we've got the Earth, we've got Mercury, and of course all the other planets. We're all rotating around the sun. And basically what happens is, if you took to a powerful telescope and observed Mercury constantly, at some point, due to the position of Earth and the position of Mercury, it appears that planet Mercury, as do the other planets, will slow down, actually stop, which we call stationary, and then proceed to turn backwards, spin backwards on its axis. I remember reading, I think it was Susan Miller wrote this, which was very clever. She said, if you can look at it like this, if you're on a freeway in a car and you are zooming along, let's just say 110 kilometers per hour. So we'll make that the sun. And there's a car in the next lane, and it is, say, traveling at 100 kilometers an hour. You are going to end up passing that car, but you're not zooming past it. You're just gradually making your way past it because you're only doing 10 Ks more. So if you're a passenger in this car and you look out the window, it appears this car is going backwards because it's losing momentum. You kind of feel like you're still, but the other car is moving. I remember being at a traffic lights once in my car, and it was on a hill, and another... No, that's right. There was a truck next to me, and the truck began to move forward upon the green light really slowly. And I thought I was going backwards. I thought I was falling backwards. I glanced over and slammed my foot on the brake and realized, well, it was already there. And so it's those kind of optical illusions that create this sensation of retrograde planets. So it isn't really, but that's how it looks. Now, if you think about what Mercury, I'll just leave those there, what Mercury represents, if we talk about a planet going backwards, turning retrograde, it just basically means that whatever that planet represents, rather than the motion or the energy moving outways or forwards, it tends to go inwards or backwards. So how can we look at this a little logically? Think about Mercury rules things like writing, teaching, presenting, journalism, sales, the intellect itself, our awareness, our thinking processes, things like logic, you know, the logical brain, but also creative expression. So, like in a nutshell, if you think about Mercury rules listening, communication, and negotiating. So if it turns backwards, it's going to affect things like that. Not only does it rule listening, negotiating, and communication, Mercury represents motion, therefore travel, transportation, movement. In astrology, when you look at Mercury and Gemini, which comes from the third house, by timeline, it also rules things like your ability to learn, your early education, your coordination. And then as you grow, we look at things like analysis. See, Mercury rules Virgo also. And you know, Virgo is a very analytical sign. Virgo is all about the details. And they say in astrology, like, anyone can pull an engine apart, but it's the Virgo that'll put it back together while everyone else is standing around scratching their heads, you know, looking for the instruction manual. So Virgo looks at what is in place and what isn't, what should be there and what shouldn't be there. So all of this comes under Mercury. And so then if we look at communication and travel and movement, we come to things like computers and phones, because Mercury actually rules computer codes and processes for computer programming. Also, of course, contracts, selling and buying, and scripts and manuscripts. So, you know, it comes under that writing and journalism side. So once again, we come back to the retrograde cycle. If it turns backwards, will all of these things turn inwards on themselves? So it's not the ideal time, and as an example, to say, publish that book or sign the contract over the house that you wish to buy. It doesn't mean everything is going to fall apart, but it can bring on delays. So again, if you want that contract signed, or if you want to move forward, if you're the seller of the house, 9 times out of 10, or okay, we'll give it 8.5, there is some kind of delay. But people see that as a bad thing, and I don't, because I think that is giving you a time to, if you think of retrograde, this is what I used to do when I was studying, think of anything retrograde says you have an opportunity to review or edit the situation or the script. It could be your life script. You know, you can rearrange, redesign, reorganize, or renew, and so on and so forth. So anything that's going on in your life that's important, it gives you an opportunity to just stop and pay attention and observe the situation that you're in. Make sure that, say if you have to, now life is life, maybe a job comes up and you're off for an interview. Well, you can't say, oh, sorry, Mercury's retrograde. Can I come back in 3 weeks? Of course, of course. So you go to the interview. But if you are aware that Mercury's retrograde, you must understand communication is key. So your heart might be in the right place, but you find that your communication is perhaps misunderstood, that your verbal delivery of how you present yourself is misunderstood. Or what I find is I'm tripping over my words. Might I just say, this is the second video I'm doing on this. I actually did a video yesterday. And if you think about Mercury retrograde, miscommunication, tripping over words, delays, interruptions. I had everything. My phone rang, someone tapped on my window, a lady came to deliver some tarot cards. Like, honestly, it's hilarious. Maybe I'll put a few little excerpts from that vid at the end of this one if I get time, because it was totally and utterly Mercury retrograde. But also, as an example, if you get the job, that's fantastic. But if it happens to be during Mercury retrograde, I always say to people, whether you get the job or you're looking over a contract to sign for a job or a house or whatever important, things going on in your life, read the contract 3 times. Don't just read it once, because what can happen is, again, miscommunication. Anything can happen where you take the job and you don't realize that, the holiday pay isn't there, or, there's something that you missed in the detail earlier on, and you find out after Mercury resumes forward motion, and then it's like, oh, I can't take a holiday for 12 months. Right, I didn't realize that. It's that sort of thing. So again, is that bad? No, of course it's not bad. But isn't it wonderful to think that you are aware of these things before you, commence your new job? So what I recommend for people is just pay attention, write down the dates in your diary. You can Google Mercury Retrograde 2016 or whatever. Write them in your diary in the beginning of the year so you know that this cycle is coming up. People are bullet journaling and doing shadow work and all sorts of things. And I think, why wouldn't you want to put Mercury retrograde in there? Because it does rule the mind and research and writing. I think it's totally and utterly apt, and it's a really good help, especially when things become complex and confusing. And I think sometimes it's easy to fall into victim mode when things keep going wrong, quote unquote. And if Mercury's retrograde, straight away stop, reassess, and have a look at what's going on. When it comes to travel, again, more often than not, it is delays that may occur. I've seen flights cancelled. You miss your bus when you think, hang on, I go down to the bus stop at the same time every day. Why did it come early today? That sort of thing. I've seen people go one way and their bags go another during Mercury retrograde. All sorts of issues with cars. You've got to be very, very careful with car accidents. Just stay aware. You can't rule everyone else on the road, but during this time, you just want to be on alert, not panic, just on alert. I will say this before I forget. No one has ever suggested that there are no car accidents or computer issues or mechanical issues when Mercury is direct. Of course not. That's ludicrous. But a good way to avoid extra hassle is to be aware that it is not ideal to start something new or launch something while Mercury, the planet of movement and communication, is retrograde. So just wait it out. Now, to give you an example, I used to work in, I call it corporate creative. I used to produce in-flight entertainment for 14 different airlines. And of course, they all had their own specific needs. They were located in various parts of the world. There were cultural differences. And one of my colleagues, who was like an IT specialist for in-flight entertainment, he understood all the technical processes with regards to uploading movies and music onto aircraft. So he would be flying constantly. He traveled so much. And so often I would say to him, oh, are you going during Mercury retro? Gee, be really, really careful. And he was like, oh my God, here we go with your hocus pocus. Yeah, whatever. And he thought I was a nut. And anyhow, he had so many problems so many times. Not just when he was traveling, but also he managed the server, which was really quite large, substantial, for this company. And it really came to the crunch after his bags went one way and he went the other. That literally happened to him. There were a number of mishaps with regards to his travel. And, when you're traveling to various countries, it's very exhausting at the best of times. Also, when you're dealing with different cultures, communication issues really threw some challenges into the mix. more than usual, should I say. And then upon return, they organised a brand new server and launched it. Oh my God, during Mercury retrograde. And I said to him, don't do it. And the whole thing came crashing down. There were major dramas. And honestly, he came to me after that and said, I want you to tell me every time Mercury goes retrograde. And from then on, he certainly did, change the schedule and adjusted it to the best of his abilities. And of course, sometimes you cannot. But at least if he couldn't, he knew to really stay aware. But that server issue was a nightmare because, the whole place went down, and it was highly disruptive and really stressful for him too. Not only that, another company I worked for, now this is going off track just a little because this involves Jupiter retrograde, but I'm going to share this with you because, again, if you think about the polarities, Mercury and Gemini are opposite Sagittarius and Jupiter. So Jupiter rules higher education, Mercury rules education. Jupiter is all about expansion, things further out. You could look at, say, the internet like Jupiter. It's things that travel to greater distances. So philosophy and long distance travel come under Jupiter, but also good fortune. So if you want to, say, expand your business, Jupiter is going to be your best friend. But if Jupiter's retrograde, well, the energy's going inward. That is not the time to expand your business. And a business that I worked for in the corporate world some years ago now decided to amalgamate with another business that's offshore. The managers and owners of both businesses had been in had been in the same industry for some years and got to know each other quite well and became quite friendly. And so they thought, well, this is a wonderful idea to bring these companies together. They're both in the same industry but do slightly different things. So this is a sure road to success. And it was during Jupiter retro. And I highly recommended, don't do it now. Just wait. It's only a few months. Continue the negotiations. But how about you just leave the official launch until after Jupiter returns to forward motion? Of course, my boss thought I was weird and didn't pay attention. And so the companies came together, and in 1 year, it all crumbled. And not only that, sadly, there was actually a bit of a fallout between the two managers, and they went their separate ways and became more or less opposition in business. You'd be surprised how much evidence there is because, people have been researching these things for many, many years now. Okay, time is getting on, so I'd better wrap this up. So just, I'll make a recommendation to you. Do have a look into Mercury retrograde, especially if you're working in any areas like sales or you're making presentations, anything to do with communication. Well, we all do. Oh, and by the way, I'd better say, think of it like this also. People do have problems with, not just communication, like I am now, but computers, as I mentioned earlier, and phones. Things can be lost. Emails are lost. Text messages, when you think, oh, that's impossible. How can a text message go haywire? Anything like that can happen during Mercury retrograde. And all of that stuff can become muddled and or lost. So it's the time to back your computer up and things like that during Mercury retrograde if you're doing something very important. So just keep that in mind also. So in a nutshell, do your best not to make important moves or leaps forward during Mercury retrograde because things are subject to change and delay. If you can avoid locking into a concept or a contract, that would really be to your benefit in the longer term. Even say with agreements, people may change their mind. If you have a verbal agreement, be very, very aware. And also, again, travel, there can be delays. And, in conclusion, I'll say just two things. A, you can always research this yourself and have a look. There's loads of articles about Mercury retrograde. And by the way, I was silly enough to commence my WordPress site, my new WordPress site that I'm working on during Mercury retrograde. What was I thinking. I just went ahead because I'm on a timeline. I have a friend who's coming to help me. I needed to prepare, blah, 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 blah. And I've had loads of problems. Very, very frustrating. And welcome to the world of Mercury retrograde. When you try and do something, see, I was attempting to launch something while the energies were turning backwards, almost against the tide. I was swimming upstream. Best to wait. Anyway, I hope in some shape or form that you've enjoyed this vid and gained some understanding about the wonderful world of astrology. So have a wonderful day and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. Yeah, just sitting here having my coffee and I thought, well, look, why not just share my my views on this. Will you excuse me 1 second? I knew this was going to happen. Right, 11 o'clock. Okay. I'm so sorry. I thought I'd bet you anything. I've been sitting here for an hour thinking I'm going to hear from her any moment. And nothing. And I thought, what's the bet? As soon as I, as soon as I start this vid, I'll hear from her. So anyway, pardon the disruption. That, my friends, is Mercury. I heard a few people recently say different things, and there was one. See, if you, we'll go back to the beginning. It wasn't that. Oh my God, I almost knocked my coffee all over my table. If you think about classified it as, it is actually like an authentic astrological phenomena. Planets turning I'm not going to edit that out. I'm telling you, this is what it is. Tripping over your words, anything to do with communication. And if you think also, sorry, I'm going off on another tangent here, but the thing is, now that I paused this video, I've got no idea what I was talking about when I did pause the video because it's been over an hour. Like I was starting to say before I was interrupted then. The person at the other end or on the internet reaches anyone around the world that Tell me when Mercury is retrograde next. Seriously? Ugh. He's like, really? Okay, thanks. Bullshit. I don't know where that came from. But I'd better stop before I go into a lecture. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and enduring the interruptions. But I think that's really so funny because that is Mercury retrograde. I rest my case. Anyway, talk to you soon. Bye.